So one of the things you wrote about was one of the surprising things that happened, surprising that it was so big, surprising to some people, was messages. Messages got a big overhaul. A lot of people complained, that just looks like Snapchat. But you can do all kinds of things, and you wrote about that. So why do you think that people are so fascinated with messaging?
Well, Apple said Messages is the most popular app on iOS, which is pretty amazing, but Apple would know. And people do love messaging. If you think about it, and people who watch shows like this one perhaps are taking their devices a little more seriously. But in general, smartphones are for messaging. And I know my daughter uses Snapchat all the time. This is part of the culture, is these messaging apps, all of which do way more than Apple's Messages app can do. This also is a trend, I think, from Apple to look at how people are using their devices and say, hey, everybody uses this thing, we ought to make it better. We saw it last year with Notes, which was always, everybody just made fun of Notes. It's like, what, Notes app, it's boring, it's not that important, but it turns out like everybody who has an iPhone uses Notes. And if that's the case, maybe Apple should invest some time in making it better. And I think that's what they're doing with Messages this time. If you're gonna have the #1 app, if the messaging category is so huge, why would you not make your messaging app better to try and sort of keep up with the Snapchats and WeChats and Lines of the world? So they did.
Right. Well, it's interesting to me. I also have a daughter who loves Snapchat, and it's this combination. It's the real first combination, true combination of, I think, social media and messaging. Obviously, there's Facebook Messenger, which has been separate. You can DM on Twitter, but I feel like Snapchat really is the combined of the two, and that generation really does use it that way. We went to the MoMA, the SF MoMA last week, and my daughter was on her phone. She was taking video, but she was also Snapchatting, so she was she wasn't saving it because, you know, that disappears, but she was experiencing it, talking to her friends, and also like posting it as a story at the same time, and that's fascinating to me.
Right, and I'm not sure Apple is really attempting to replace something like Snapchat so much as the fact that Messages, it's on every phone. It's sort of your default. You have to go get a third-party app if you want to do it. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that. Snapchat's not the easiest interface for people above the age of 20 to understand. But by adding these features to Messages, they're making the same stuff accessible to other people. So I think if there was a #1 reason for Apple to do this, it's, hey, people seem to like this on these other platforms. If we bring this to Messages, more people will get to use stickers and animations and things like that have proven popular on other platforms and just haven't existed on Messages and iMessage before.
Right. It's interesting that you compared Notes to Messages, because to me, I mean, this is the way you think, which is fascinating to me. Notes is kind of boring, as you said, but all of their advancements were incredibly useful, like encrypted notes and, you know, being able to share notes more easily, that like really useful. But being able to like tap words in your messages and turn them into emoji is the opposite of useful.
That's a productivity feature. What are you talking about? Yeah, I think it's how you look at it. Like, what's a productivity feature? What's a value feature in Notes? It's going to be stuff like that. What's a value feature in Messages? It's a totally different thing. Messages is about communication and having fun and connecting with your friends and your family, whereas Notes is about getting things down, making lists, checking things off, stuff like that. So it's different. What they have in common is this thing, which is Apple knows, which we don't know from the outside looking in. Apple knows how much people use all those apps that are installed stock on the iPhone and the iPad, and they look at it and go, oh geez, we got to do something here. So I had the moment listening to Phil Schiller and Craig Federighi from Apple talking to John Gruber at his live talk show last week, and they made mention of this, and I suddenly made that connection. I put it down in my actually reminders. Speaking of apps, I wrote down very quickly why Messages is like Notes, because I had that moment where I was like, oh, I see why they're doing it. Right. And you know, the selfie camera, improving that, or improving the camera on the iPad, I think those follow in that same category of things that Apple didn't really expect people to do. But once they looked, they saw everybody's taking pictures with their iPad, and you get the sense like, if you're smart, you look at that and you're like, all right, I guess we should make the iPad camera better. And that's really, I think, what's happening with Messages.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. I mean, all the kids are on Snapchat. You know, young people are on it. And as you said, it's harder for older people to understand it in general. So those young people still need some other way to connect to those older people, which is interesting. I mean, your kids probably use Snapchat all the time, but not to communicate with you, right? I'm assuming they use messages to communicate with you.
Yeah, I sent my daughter a Snapchat the other day, and she replied to it, and she said, "You didn't even look at my reply." I'm like, "Yeah, I was busy with other things." It's like, you don't understand how Snapchat works. It's instant. But yeah, so I do often send them texts using messages because I'm their dad and therefore boring and don't get it. But Snapchat's interface is also really weird. I mean, it is not like any other iOS app. It takes some getting used to. I feel like I need to put in some more time. Because my initial response was, "This is terrible. Why would you do it this way?" But obviously, it really works for so many people that I need to learn. I needed some lessons from my daughter, tech lessons from my daughter. It had to happen.
Well, they've updated it recently, I think, for us. I mean, it is a little bit, yeah, it is a little bit easier to use. But I still think if you're saying, like, what time do you need to be picked up, like, you know, those kinds of things are still going to be messages. And
yeah, I mean, Snapchat, you're sharing videos of the moment and making stories and things like that. Yeah, if it really is like, which side of the street are you standing on, I think we can use messages for that. That's good enough.
And so what about this rumor that now appears to just be a rumor that Android was going to get messages? Did you ever believe that?
I thought it was possible. I think it's a question of what's more important to Apple, making messages and iMessage so vital and exciting that people are going to feel left out if they don't have an iPhone, or is it make it a platform that can compete on its own with all of the other messaging platforms that's out there? And the bottom line is Apple makes money selling hardware, so you have to make a circuitous path to get from iMessage for Android to value for Apple. And that's always the question to ask. It's like, wouldn't this be cool? It's, why would Apple do this? Why is this a good idea for Apple? And yes, it would be cool, but I think that's where it falls down, is I'm unclear on exactly why that would be the right move for Apple to make.
Right. I mean, it used to be harder to message with Android users. I felt like but that's sort of in the past. I mean, it used to be that people would say, "I didn't get your message," or "I didn't understand that emoji," or, but that's not such a big problem anymore, I don't think, with Android users.
Right, and actually, the more complicated these messaging platforms get, and the richness that Apple's adding is a good example of that, the more difficult interoperability is, so you kind of have to let it be. They would have to create a version of iMessage for Android that had feature parity with the iOS version, presumably, or, the danger is otherwise it's going to be like what it's going to be on the Mac, which is you can see them but not send any of these special things, which is not the greatest. So it adds a whole other layer of challenge, and you fall back to basic interoperability, or you use one of those third-party apps, and I think that's just that would be the number one reason for Apple to do it, would be to say, look, don't resort to someone else. We've got you covered. But I don't know if that's enough of a reason for them.
Right. So I know you've installed some of these developer betas, and you're not allowed to show them, but I think you're allowed to talk about them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can talk about them. They were shown publicly last week, so I think that there's a lot that's fair game out there.
So have you been using the new features and messages?
I have, I tried it briefly. I'm still trying to get a hang of it, and there's some stuff that is just not there yet. But it's exactly what they showed in the demo. It's a new interface. It's actually, speaking of something like Snapchat, if you look at the interface for the new version of Messages, they're like buttons in weird places, and you're like, is that the send button? And now it looks like a triangle or a play button or something. It's going to take some getting used to, because with this extra richness comes complexity that wasn't there before.
So what happens to people that you're sending these messages to? Have they been able to see, like, people who aren't on the beta?
If you're on iOS 10, you can see messages from iOS 10. Otherwise, they I think degrade back to, maybe it's images in some cases, and some features just don't come through. And that's going to be the same on the Mac. Even with macOS Sierra, it's going to be mostly just sort of, you'll see what gets sent to you, but the sort of rich selection of things that's available on iOS 10, won't go to other platforms and other versions. It'll be a simplified version.